In this age of instant connection and boundless information, kindness has become a celebrated virtue. We hear it everywhere. Be kind, spread love, help others. But is it possible that kindness, the very quality we are often told is our greatest strength, can become our undoing? Have we, in our quest to be the kindest versions of ourselves, overlooked the ancient wisdom that warns against taking any virtue to the extreme? Welcome, fellow Stoics, to a journey through the hidden dangers of overkindness, a path that might challenge the way you think about generosity and compassion. Today, we will explore 6 ways kindness can ruin your life when it is not tempered by wisdom, self-awareness, and boundaries. This isn't to say that kindness itself is bad, far from it. But Stoicism, the philosophical school founded in ancient Greece and carried forward by great minds like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, teaches us that all virtues must be practiced with balance. In the following minutes, we'll dive into the potential pitfalls of excessive kindness, each more subtle than the last. And as we go along, I encourage you to reflect on your own life. Have you ever felt drained by being too generous? Have you found yourself overcommitted or saying yes when you desperately wanted to say no? If you're intrigued by the possibility that your good intentions might be doing more harm than good, stick with me, because by the end of this video, you may view kindness in a completely different light. 1. Taking on too much. When kindness overextends you. Taking on too much. When kindness overextends you. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to help but felt completely overwhelmed? Picture this. You're at a gathering, and a friend mentions they're moving houses next weekend. Before you can even think, your hand shoots up. "I'll help," you say, despite the fact that your own schedule is already overflowing with commitments. In that moment, your desire to be kind overpowers your inner voice of reason, and now you're stretched thin, overburdened by promises you're not sure you can keep. This is the danger of overcommitment. Stoicism teaches us that to live in harmony with nature, we must first know our own limits. When we ignore those limits in the name of kindness, we are no longer practicing virtue. We are engaging in self-deception. Are you truly being kind when your efforts leave you depleted and resentful? How can you give your best to others when you've given too much of yourself? Imagine your life as a teacup. Each commitment you make is a drop of tea. When you take on too much, the cup overflows, spilling over and making a mess. The Stoics would remind us to know the size of our cup, to understand our capacity before we promise more than we can give. Have you found yourself in a situation where, by the end of the day, you're so exhausted from helping others that you can't even focus on your own well-being? Does that sound familiar? Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, reminds us that time is one of our most precious resources. And yet, how often do we give it away without considering its value? Overcommitment isn't just about physical or emotional fatigue, it's about mismanaging your most finite asset. When you give too much of your time, not only are you failing to be kind to yourself, but you are also robbing others of your full presence. Think of the times you've promised to help a friend, attend a social event, and take care of personal errands all in one day. How did you feel by the end of it? Likely drained, irritable, and unable to fully engage in any of the tasks. The Stoic approach here is not to avoid helping others, but to do so with mindfulness. When we overextend ourselves, we are no longer acting out of genuine compassion. We are acting out of a sense of obligation or fear of disappointing others. The key is to pause, reflect on your capacity, and make deliberate decisions that honor both your needs and the needs of those around you. So, next time you find yourself at the edge of overcommitment, ask yourself, am I being true to my nature? Or am I sacrificing myself in the name of kindness? Remember, Stoicism teaches us to align our actions with reason and nature. It's not unkind to say no. In fact, It might be the kindest thing you can do for yourself and others. As we move forward, let's take a deeper look at one of the most common mistakes people make in the name of kindness: avoiding conflict. Many of us think that by staying quiet and keeping the peace, we're being kind. But are we really? Or are we simply avoiding discomfort at the cost of authenticity and real connection? Stick with me as we explore the uncomfortable truth behind conflict avoidance and how Stoicism offers a better way to handle it. 2. Avoiding conflicts. Is it really kindness or just fear? How often have you stayed silent to keep the peace, thinking you were being kind by avoiding conflict? Perhaps a colleague repeatedly crosses a boundary, or a friend constantly makes insensitive comments. Each time, you swallow your feelings, convincing yourself that it's kinder to say nothing than to cause a confrontation. But here's the truth that Stoicism reveals. Avoiding conflict is not always an act of kindness. In fact, in many cases, it is an act of avoidance driven by fear, not compassion. The Stoics believed that we must confront difficulties head-on. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds us that obstacles are part of life and that we should not shy away from them. Conflict, when approached with wisdom, is not something to fear, but an opportunity for growth. So ask yourself, when you avoid conflict, is it because you genuinely believe it's the right thing to do, or is it because you are uncomfortable with the tension it brings? True kindness is rooted in courage, not in avoidance. Think back to a time when you avoided a necessary conversation, telling yourself it was for the sake of kindness. Maybe you ignored a problem with a roommate, letting small annoyances pile up until one day they exploded over something trivial. Or perhaps you kept silent about your true feelings in a relationship, thinking you were protecting the other person, only to feel resentment building inside you. Stoicism teaches us that unspoken frustrations are like seeds of bitterness. Left unchecked, they grow into deeper problems, both for ourselves and for those we care about. By avoiding conflict, we are not sparing others from discomfort. We are merely delaying the inevitable. And when that inevitable conflict arises, it often comes with greater force than if it had been addressed earlier. But what if conflict, when handled properly, could actually strengthen our relationships? The Stoic approach to conflict is not about being combative or aggressive. Instead, it's about addressing issues calmly and rationally, seeking understanding rather than victory. When we face conflicts with a level head and an open heart, we are practicing a higher form of kindness, one that values honesty and long-term harmony over short-term comfort. So, next time you find yourself tempted to avoid a difficult conversation, pause. Ask yourself, am I avoiding this because I'm afraid of the discomfort, or because it's truly the best thing to do? If it's the former, remember that true Stoic kindness often requires us to face what is uncomfortable for the sake of what is right. We've all been there, trying to help someone we care about by offering advice, guidance, or support, hoping they'll change. But what if this effort to change others is not kindness, but control in disguise? As we dive into this next section, I encourage you to reflect on your relationships and the ways in which you might be giving more than you should. Stay with me, because this lesson is about to get deeply personal. 3. Thinking you can change others. The trap of overgiving. Have you ever poured yourself into helping someone only to watch them fall back into the same destructive patterns? Maybe it was a friend who repeatedly made poor decisions in their relationships, or a family member who struggled with bad habits. Each time, you offered advice, lent a helping hand, and hoped that your kindness would be the catalyst for their change. But here's the hard truth. You can't change people. And in trying to do so, you may be setting yourself up for frustration and disappointment. Stoicism teaches us that the only thing we can truly control is our own actions, not the actions of others. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, reminds us that while we can offer guidance and support, we must ultimately let go of the outcome. Trying to change someone is often an act of overgiving, and it places an unrealistic burden on both you and the person you are trying to help. Think about the friend who continues to date the wrong people, despite your well-meaning advice, or the sibling who always seems to fall into the same patterns of self-sabotage. You care about them deeply, and out of kindness, you try to steer them onto a better path, but each time they return to their old habits. Does this sound familiar? In these moments, it's easy to feel frustrated, like your kindness is going to waste. But according to Stoicism, the problem isn't your kindness, it's your attachment to the outcome. The Stoics would tell us that it's not our job to fix others, only to offer our help when asked, and then to release our expectations. Everyone is on their own journey, and no amount of kindness can force someone to walk a path they're not ready for. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This Stoic principle reminds us that our primary responsibility is to ourselves, to act virtuously, regardless of whether others follow suit. So, what does this mean in practice? It means offering support without strings attached, without the need to see results. It means recognizing that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step back and let others learn their own lessons, even if that involves mistakes. As you reflect on the people in your life, consider, have you been trying to change someone out of a desire to help? Have you been giving more of your energy than is wise? It's time to recognize the limits of your influence and to shift your focus inward. Instead of trying to change others, work on cultivating your own virtue and leading by example. After all, the Stoic path is one of self-mastery, not the mastery of others. I hope by now you're starting to see the deeper wisdom that Stoicism offers us when it comes to kindness. But we're only halfway through. The final 3 lessons are even more crucial, so stay with me as we explore the ways overkindness can lead to self-neglect, financial strain, and the trap of needing approval. You won't want to miss these insights. They might just change the way you approach your relationships and your own well-being. Before we dive into the next section, ask yourself, have you ever been so focused on helping others that you forgot about your own needs? What happens when kindness becomes self-sacrifice? Join me as we explore how forgetting to care for yourself can ruin your life in the name of being kind. 4. Forgetting to care for yourself when kindness turns into self-sacrifice. How often do you put others' needs above your own, believing that it's the kindest thing to do? Maybe you've stayed up late to help a friend, skipped meals to meet a work deadline, or given away your time and energy so freely that you forgot to care for yourself. While these acts may seem noble, they come at a cost. Stoicism teaches us that we must first tend to our own well-being if we are to be of any use to others. The Stoic idea of self-care is not about indulgence, but about preservation. Imagine yourself as a vessel. If you constantly pour yourself out for others without refilling, you will eventually run dry. This is not a sustainable way to live, and it is certainly not in line with Stoic wisdom. The great Stoic philosopher Seneca reminds us that we must take care of the soul, and that includes ensuring we have the energy and resources to continue living virtuously. But how often do we forget this lesson? How many times have you pushed yourself to the point of burnout, thinking that by doing so, you were being kind or helpful? Perhaps you've experienced the exhaustion that comes from being everything to everyone, while neglecting your own needs. In the end, this self-sacrifice leaves you depleted, resentful, and less effective in helping anyone at all. Consider the example of a friend who is always there for others. They give advice, offer help, and never say no to a request. At first glance, it seems admirable, but look closer and you'll see the cracks: tired eyes, mounting stress, a sense of being underappreciated. Eventually, this person may reach a breaking point. Their kindness, once a source of pride, becomes a burden. They feel drained, yet they continue to give, thinking that self-sacrifice is the ultimate virtue. But Stoicism teaches us differently. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of maintaining inner tranquility and guarding against overexertion. He understood that without a strong foundation of self-care, we cannot sustain our virtuous actions. Kindness should not be an act of martyrdom. It should come from a place of strength, not depletion. So, how do you strike the balance between being kind to others and caring for yourself? The answer lies in setting boundaries. When we recognize our limits and protect our time, energy, and well-being, we are better equipped to offer genuine kindness without sacrificing ourselves in the process. Ask yourself, am I giving because I want to, or because I feel I have to? If the answer is the latter, it's time to reevaluate your priorities and take a step back. As we continue, let's explore another common trap of overkindness, letting others take advantage of your generosity. When kindness becomes expected, not appreciated, it's time to reassess your boundaries. Join me as we dive into the next lesson on how to protect yourself from being used. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. How have you balanced kindness and self-care in your own life? 5. Letting others use you. When kindness becomes an expectation. Kindness is often celebrated, and rightly so. But what happens when your kindness is no longer seen as a gift, but as something others expect from you? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your generosity is taken for granted? Maybe you're the person who always brings the treats to the office, the friend who's always available for favors, or the family member who is constantly relied upon for help. While these acts may come from a place of genuine kindness, there's a fine line between being generous and being used. The Stoics warned us about this. They taught that everything in life, including our kindness, must be balanced with wisdom. When we give too freely without boundaries, people may start to see our kindness as something they are entitled to, rather than something they should appreciate. Seneca wrote extensively about the nature of giving and receiving, reminding us that generosity must be tempered with discernment. If we give without thought, we risk depleting ourselves and fostering resentment. Think about Lucy, the co-worker who always brought in homemade treats for everyone in the office. At first, her efforts were appreciated. People complimented her, thanked her, and enjoyed the surprise. But over time, her kindness became expected. The one day she didn't bring anything, murmurs of disappointment filled the air. Lucy was left feeling unappreciated and frustrated. What started as a kind gesture turned into an obligation, and Lucy found herself trapped by her own generosity. This is what happens when we don't set clear boundaries around our kindness. The more we give without limits, the more people come to expect from us. And when they begin to take our kindness for granted, it's not only damaging to us, but also to the relationship itself. Stoicism teaches us that we should give from a place of genuine desire, not from a sense of obligation or fear of letting others down. How do you know if you're being used? Consider how you feel after acts of kindness. Are you left with a sense of fulfillment, or do you feel drained and unappreciated? Do people thank you for your efforts, or do they simply assume that you'll always be there? If you feel like your kindness is no longer valued, it may be time to set some boundaries. Stoicism reminds us that setting limits is not selfish, it's essential. Marcus Aurelius spoke often about the importance of maintaining our inner balance, and part of that balance comes from knowing when to say no. True kindness is not about giving endlessly without regard for our own well-being. It's about giving wisely, with clear intentions and healthy boundaries. So, next time someone asks for your help, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, Am I giving because I want to, or because I feel I have to? If it's the latter, consider setting a boundary. Kindness should be a gift, not an obligation. As we move on, let's dive into the dangers of overgenerosity. What happens when you give more than you can afford, whether it's time, energy, or money? And how do we ensure that our kindness is sustainable in the long run? Stay with me, because this lesson is key to avoiding the financial and emotional pitfalls of overgiving. And before we continue, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever felt like your kindness was being taken for granted? How did you handle it? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to know how you balance kindness with self-respect. 6. Giving too much. When generosity leads to self-depletion. Generosity is a beautiful thing, a virtue that many of us strive to embody. But what happens when generosity crosses the line into overgiving? When, in the pursuit of helping others, you find yourself depleted, emotionally, financially, or physically. This is the hidden danger of excessive kindness. It can leave you bankrupt in ways you didn't expect. Stoicism teaches us to practice moderation in all things, including generosity. The Stoics believed that virtues should be exercised with wisdom, and that even something as noble as giving can become harmful if taken to the extreme. Think about the times you've given too much of your time, your money, or your energy to others, and were left feeling empty in return. What did that experience teach you about balance? Consider the story of Sarah. Sarah was known for being generous. She would always lend money to friends, even when she couldn't really afford it. It made her feel good to help, and at first, it seemed like a virtuous thing to do. But over time, Sarah found herself in financial trouble. She had given so much to others that when she needed help, there was nothing left for herself. And to make matters worse, those she had helped were nowhere to be found when she needed them most. This is the trap of overgenerosity. When we give too much, we not only risk depleting our own resources, but also creating a sense of entitlement in others. The Stoics understood that true generosity must be balanced with self-preservation. As Epictetus taught, we must be mindful of our own needs first, so that we can continue to give sustainably. It's not about being stingy, it's about being wise. Have you ever given so much of yourself that you ended up feeling exhausted or worse, resentful? Perhaps you've spent countless hours helping others, only to realize that your own tasks have fallen behind. Or maybe you've lent money to friends or family, only to find yourself struggling when the time came to pay your own bills. Stoicism teaches us that we must be cautious with our resources, whether they be financial, emotional, or physical. Giving should come from a place of abundance, not scarcity. The key to avoiding this pitfall is to practice mindful generosity. Before you give, ask yourself, can I truly afford to give this right now without harming myself? If the answer is no, it's time to set a boundary. Remember, Stoicism is about living in accordance with nature, and part of that is recognizing our own limitations. It's not selfish to protect your own well-being. It's necessary for long-term sustainability. As Marcus Aurelius wisely wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. This Stoic principle reminds us that virtue is about balance. True generosity doesn't require us to sacrifice ourselves. It requires us to give wisely and within our means. And there you have it, 6 ways that kindness, when taken to extremes, can ruin your life. But don't get me wrong, kindness is still one of the most powerful virtues we can practice. The key, as Stoicism teaches us, is balance. By setting boundaries, caring for ourselves, and giving mindfully, we can ensure that our kindness remains a source of strength, not depletion. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the lessons we've explored today. How has Stoicism influenced the way you approach kindness in your life? Have you ever experienced the dangers of overgiving? Let me know in the comments below. I'm eager to learn from your experiences and hear your perspective. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who may benefit from these Stoic insights. Together, we can continue to explore the wisdom of Stoicism and apply it to our everyday lives. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and until next time, remember, be kind, but be wise.